Parliamentary colleagues from Diego Martin Northeast, Mr. Colum Imbert, from Laventil East, Morvan, Ms. Donna Cox, and the hard-working Member of Parliament on behalf of the long-suffering people of La Brea, Mr. Fitzgerald Jeffrey, Senator Avinash Singh, and Senator Diane Baldio Chedi Singh. We have a full house tonight of PNM executive members, but we're running a bit late, so I think I have to curtail the acknowledgement, otherwise it will take us until midnight. And there are some complaints that you may want to go to bed early. So let me just acknowledge our PNM family here in Oropouche, East and West, and those of you by your thousands listening at home. Tonight, if I curtail my presentation, it is because the job has been so very well done by those who went before. I'm very happy that I'm not running against Indar for the post of field officer, because Indar takes no prisoners. It's an election, he's running on his record, and if you're going to challenge him, he'll challenge your record. That's what elections are about. And between Indar, Daniel Duki, and Faris Alwari, a lot of issues have been dealt with. But I want to talk to you a little bit tonight about the management of the affairs of Trinidad and Tobago, against the background of a letter that I've written to the President of the Republic last Friday. I don't know how many of you followed the debate in the Parliament, a motion from the Salaries Review Commission, where the emoluments of a number of officers who fall under that commission came to Parliament for adjudication and acceptance or rejection, as the case might be. But you would have probably heard that, as it normally is, nobody pays any attention to anybody else on the government payroll. The only people who get kicked about in this exercise are members of Parliament. Because somehow it has gotten to the head of the people of Trinidad and Tobago that you could allow the Parliament not to be properly managed or supervised, and as long as members of Parliament don't get a pay increase, everybody is happy. Other people who you have no control over, who you can't fire, who you can't hire, you pay no attention to what is happening with them. But you have fun whenever the Salaries Review Commission puts a report in. But there's something more important than that. In that debate in the Parliament, I said then, and I'm saying now, the business of the people of Trinidad and Tobago is not being supervised. And prime ministers like it so. Let me point out to you what I'm talking about. The government does not do a good job of examining and reporting on itself, especially if the report is a bad report card. When you have a situation where you have some kind of coalition arrangement like we have now, a loose arrangement where you have people from different political persuasions, or even if you have one party with members making up the government, what happens is that members of Parliament all want to be ministers. The reason being that if you are not a minister, you get into two difficulties. One, you don't get paid properly, and you can't get a job outside of the Parliament job, even while you're serving, and worse, after you stop serving. So everybody wants to be in the cabinet. So when you have a loose arrangement like you have now, which probably is the worst kind, the Prime Minister has to please everybody. Because if she doesn't please everybody, they start to walk away like fleas from a dead dog. And the last thing the Prime Minister wants is for people from her various coalition elements to walk away when she is saying, I give you the assurance that I will hold the coalition together. Well, NJAC was never there. They brought nothing to the table. So they're happy to take what they get. MSJ walked away. TOP was decimated. COP died on the altar of hypocrisy. And all that's left is the UNC. So to keep office holders in place, what has happened is that we are now experiencing the largest cabinet in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. And virtually everybody in the parliament is a minister of government. It is so ridiculous that under the standing orders of the parliament, you cannot be in the chair if you hold ministerial office. The only person on the government side who does not hold that kind of office and is not disqualified from acting in the post of, serving in the post of deputy speaker, deputy president of the Senate is James Lambert. Everybody else is disqualified by virtue of the fact that they hold ministerial appointment. And everybody, including Roger Samuel, is a minister in the government. That might sound laughable to you, but let me tell you what that means. It means that the billions of dollars being spent by the government cannot be supervised, cannot be adjudicated upon, except by the interventions of the opposition. And let me explain the jokey part of this too. Suppose James Lambert is serving as head of the Senate, because he's the only person qualified to serve there if the substantive person goes abroad or goes to the hospital. And then for some reason, the president has to leave the country. You know who is the president of Trinidad and Tobago? My former PNM councillor, James Lambert. But put that aside. As a result of all the parliamentarians being roped into the government in that way, there's no freedom of parliamentarians in the House to supervise, to serve on committees, or to hold the government to account. And that's why I tell you, prime ministers like it so. This prime minister loves it. So you saw recently, a report came to the parliament, as one comes there every year, from the Auditor General's Department. The last one that came was for the year 2012. You would not like to believe what that report contains. It contains a whole plethora of reports of misconduct, lack of information, either incompetence or downright corruption, breaches of regulations, breaches of the law in the spending of monies in this multi-billion-dollar budget that went the year in 2012. This government is spending record-breaking numbers of billions and have put in place an arrangement where there are no parliamentarians from the government group to contribute to the parliamentary oversight arrangements of the parliament. But you said the opposition should do the job. But the opposition is viewed as part-time. So here we have moved ourselves from a budget of $300 million when the PNM started off the first development program in the 50s, to one where we now have an annual budget every 12 months. Every 12 months, the government is adding $50 or $60 billion into the economy. A number of ministries. I am a member of parliament. I can't keep pace with who is minister of what. And outside of the parliamentary arrangements in the development program, billions of dollars being spent in the public sector, the state sector, at Petrotrin, at NGC, all over the country, WASA, TNTech. Who is supervising this? Every now and then you'll hear from the press that they discovered something wrong, something bad. Every now and then you'll hear the opposition saying, we're not having this because X has done that and Y has done that. That is but a very thin end of a very thick wedge. What you're hearing about is a small part of the general mismanagement of the company, of the country. And what is happening is that huge amounts of monies are being allocated, spent, wasted, and stolen. And there is no proper arrangement in the parliament to hold people to account because the parliament is not functioning as a supervisory body of the executive. So now, when I became opposition leader, we had a new prime minister and a new opposition leader. I said to the prime minister then on the parliament floor, we are aware of a number of shortcomings in the country. But now that you and I are holding these positions as two new officers in the position of prime minister and opposition leader, it falls to us now to do things differently to bring about an improvement in the country's management. I thought I was talking to a serious prime minister because I'm a serious opposition leader for a while. I'm not going to be here for very long, one way or the other. Instead of listening to that, the prime minister proceeds to do exactly what ought not to have been done, which is to generate this humongous cabinet. And now you have a parliament where the parliamentary committees that are supposed to oversee these expenditures, these billion-dollar expenditures. There are 5 committees that exist in the parliament right now. Among them, the Public Accounts Committee, which is to oversee, manage, monitor, and report on the budget, which was $60-odd billion in the last year. The Public Accounts Enterprises Committee, which is to oversee what is happening in the state enterprise sector outside of the national budget of the central government. And then you have 3 other committees. But these committees are populated by ministers and opposition members. The ministers are required to report on themselves and are usually too busy to come to the committee. And when they come, they're not coming with an open mind. They're coming to protect and defend themselves and are largely running interference between the opposition and the public servants so you don't get to find out what's going on in the state enterprises. So if opposition members or independent members of the Senate say, look, we want an answer for this or an answer for that, you have a minister of government in there or a parliamentary secretary in there trying to block and protect so that you don't get to find out what the opposition is after or what the independent senators is after. End result of that, wrongdoing is buried and protected by the government because the government doesn't want to be exposed. And all your money is being wasted or stolen, and you have nothing in place to change that. I can tell you tonight, it is my estimation, by virtue of my long experience in the political life of Trinidad and Tobago, that 60% of government expenditure is wasted or stolen in Trinidad and Tobago. 60%. It is my view that it's only 40% of what we spend that we get value for money on. And the parliament is an idle or innocent bystander in this arrangement. So when this Salaries Review Commission thing came, I took the position then, and I'm taking it now, that we have to change that. We cannot oversee billion-dollar waste and billion-dollar corruption with part-time parliamentarians. And the commission says to the parliament, we have not properly treated with parliamentarians because we have to do, a job evaluation to determine what parliamentarians do to determine what they should be paid. Now, what this means, you maintain the situation where all parliamentarians want to be in the cabinet. But if parliamentarians were being paid properly as parliamentarians, you don't have to be in the cabinet to get a good salary. And the prime minister wouldn't have to give everybody a cabinet post to keep them in the government. their primary role and responsibility and their primary income will come to them by virtue of being a member of parliament, which will separate them from the cabinet. And then such parliamentarians, whether they are government backbenchers or whether they are opposition members, they will now hold the cabinet accountable for the expenditure that is being wasted and stolen. Simple as that. And I make no bones about this because I'm not here asking for a pay increase, because right now my pension probably is better than my present salary. Because I worked a long time in the public sector and my pension is based on my ministerial earnings. So I could stay home right now and do nothing but play with my dogs and get the same or more money. But I think we need to fix Trinidad and Tobago. We got to fix it. And let me point out to you the nonsense that goes on. The opposition or a member of parliament in Trinidad and Tobago under the new arrangement as just passed in the parliament is confined to $17,000. Go through the state enterprise sector and you'll find hundreds of people, some of them with ill-defined jobs, earning twice that. Massa bull, massa cow. So you can't pay a decent salary to make parliamentarians well paid and full-time to get their full service to monitor and protect your expenditure or your assets by virtue of having a parliament that takes the government into account and functions regularly and let the government report to the parliament as is required by the Constitution. They can't do that. How many of you saw a report, a television anchor leaving a television station 2 days ago? Well, I'm advised that she's going to a new job. And I'm glad for the young lady. I mean, she's one of my favorites. But I'm also told that where she was at TV6, the salary was about $12,000 a month. I'm also advised, subject to correction, that she's on her way to GISL to be paid by you $50,000 a month. So when it's time to pay somebody at GISL for whatever wonderful job they will do there, which is government propaganda, it's quite okay to pay from the state pocket like that. But when it's time to pay members of parliament to do the important jobs of making laws and monitoring your expenditure, monitoring the budget, monitoring the development program, serving constituencies, you can't pay them. Because you have this nonsensical approach in this country that they don't deserve anything. And they ask for the work, so they shouldn't be asking for money. But in the meantime, nobody is minding the store. And the money is just flowing through the country, into people's accounts, into contractors' hands, wasted all over the place, and nobody is in charge. Trinidad and Tobago is on autopilot. We're a cheese factory with UNC rats all over the place. Nobody in charge of the factory. That's what's happening here. But you have to ask yourself, we depended on the Salaries Review Commission to take this into account. To take into account that we've long passed the stage where we need full-time parliamentarians who are paid accordingly and you demand their time. Only this week, one of the committees, Public Accounts Committee, which one? Group 1 committee. One of the committees in Parliament couldn't meet. Police service, the fellows who are supposed to fight crime, the committee couldn't examine them. Complaints authority. Because our senator is on that committee. On the way to the committee, he was called to court. He's a lawyer. He makes his living being a lawyer. So he's called to court by the judge. He turns around and goes to the court. No quorum in the parliament, so the parliament committee couldn't meet to examine the Police Complaints Authority. So here you have situations where a part-time person not available to the parliament and the parliament business can go on. And that happens all the time. The hardest working people on committees are the opposition members. They will tell you, the government will tell you, Colm Imbert of the PNM, Faris Alwari of the PNM, Marlene MacDonald of the PNM, we are the ones in the parliament who are doing the work in committee because the government is busy governing or partying. But we are part-time. But to make the matter more laughable, even as we are pointing out this to the people, to the country, to the parliament, to the prime minister, to the Statutory Review Commission and all, saying that we need full-time parliamentarians because there is work for full-time in the parliament. Even as we're doing that, we have 5 committees now in the parliament. They have problem functioning as I've just described. You know what they've done? We as a parliament have just approved, a couple of weeks ago, new standing orders for the parliament to make the parliament more modern, more effective, and ostensibly to function more effectively. One of the things you have heard about, and I think is the only thing that made the news and people interested in the changes made in the new arrangements, that you will reduce the speaking time of members of parliament from 75 minutes max to 45 minutes max. That's okay, we support that. It means you can get more members involved in the debate. And if we are saying that members need to make themselves, more effective in presenting their points, and we can get more work done in the parliament. But would you believe that at the same time, the parliament is limping along with 5 committees that you don't have enough full-time members to serve on? The new arrangements have added 7 more committees. So we'll go from 5 standing committees to 12 standing committees. And that doesn't take into account ad hoc committees that you'll put in place if during the debate in trying to pass law, you need committees to hammer out legislation. So is it that there's some conspiracy to grind the parliament to a halt? Because if experience has shown that the current arrangement cannot have 5 functioning, effective standing committees, and we've accepted to put 7 more, make it 12, with the same part-time people and the same big cabinet. Because my understanding of approving that, as I read out in the parliament, is that the same guidance that brought us to the point of saying that the parliament need these additional 7 committees and need full-time people, the strategic plan says that you need 75% of the parliament to be available to parliament, meaning that no more than 25% should be in the cabinet. So they accepted the recommendation to change the standing orders to come into force in July or August, but they have not accepted that they will have to reduce the cabinet to 25% by 2015. So you're going to have this humongous cabinet still alive and well. You've put arrangements in place of 12 standing committees plus ad hoc committees. And you know that that means that the parliament will not be able to function. And you, the people, whether you're here tonight or you're home in your house, you are in agreement with that because you have it in your head that you've done something good by agreeing that you shouldn't have parliamentarians paid properly so that they can be available to the parliament. But let me tell you how that works. If you hire the doctors in the hospital and doctors are not available to do what doctors do in the hospital, then you'll get no health care. If you say you have teachers in the schools and teachers are not there to carry out the teaching, they aren't, for whatever reason, they aren't available because they're off looking for a job, running taxi or doing something else, then they get no teaching done. That's how it's done. So why do you think you could have the parliament where there's work to be done. And you don't want to have the workers who carry the work be there and available to the house. Because you say to them, you could work here part-time, but go off somewhere else and work as well. And expect the work in the parliament to be done. And all of this is a carryover from the colonial days when they didn't have much to do in the parliament. They come one Friday alone and they had a few dollars to spend. And the parliament was a once-a-week thing. Our parliament now cannot properly function, only meeting their half day on a Friday. Because if we continue with that, then the billions that the cabinet is spending will never be properly supervised. And that is the opportunity for them to thief us blind and to do all kinds of wrong things because there's nobody in charge. And I want the people of this country to see this for what it is. It's penny wise and pound foolish. You want to tell me that you don't want to spend an extra $1 or $2 to ensure that your parliamentarians who you elect are available to you in the parliament. But you're prepared to accept that your parliament and your purse is not supervised and are not supervised? How? How can we accept that? I raise this issue because I am not afraid of the negative comments that come from the ill-informed about not paying parliamentarians. I raise it because the solution to the current problem is to have a number of parliamentarians available in the parliament to meet more than one day a week and to spend time in the parliament examining your accounts, calling for papers, bringing in officers, and following contracts and other things in the country. Otherwise, we're wasting time. We're wasting time and losing money. There's no proper functioning parliament in the world, an economy like ours, where the parliament does not have some control over what is going on. Let me ask you a question. Are you aware that all the major projects being carried out by the government right now doesn't appear in the parliament? Are you aware of that? Because most of them being funded off the budget or being funded in a state enterprise where some board that the cabinet appoints, and that's another story for another day. The cabinet appoints boards of all kinds of shades and complexions. Many of them shouldn't even be on another day. But they are there spending your billions, and the parliament is merrily going along without information on what is going on there. And I could tell you this for a fact. Even members of the cabinet are now relying on investigative journalists to tell them what is happening in the government. Sometimes in their own portfolio. That is how your business is being managed. So if you want a salaries review commission that tells you that we will deal with parliamentarians sometime in the future, so in the meantime, let them continue to be unavailable to the parliament while the billions are being flowing through the system. And sometime in the undescribed future, we'll discover what parliamentarians do and determine whether or not they should be full-time. That is what we are being told now, against a reasoned argument that we should have parliamentarians as elected full-time to the parliament so that the parliament can now become an effective watchdog on the cabinet, because half of the wrongdoing starts with cabinet incompetence or ill will, and it ends outside, either in the state enterprise or in the private sector. And you need to be able to track it and monitor it and make sure that it stays on the straight and narrow. Have you all observed that the building in Port of Spain called One Alexandria, which the government of Trinidad and Tobago, happened to be a PNM government, had rented to be used for a ministry. It's an executive style building, an expensive building. But whether it should have been rented or not is not the issue. It was rented. A new government comes into office. And the next thing we know, almost 4 years later, the building is still empty. And you, the taxpayer, have been paying millions of dollars for it. But in the meantime, the building cannot be used because they have not put in the partitions and whatever to make it a real office. It's a shell, and you have to go in and what's called outfit the building to make it usable as an office. When I first heard what was going on with this matter, the cost of the outfitting that was raised with me when I heard about the shenanigans was way below $20 million. But I heard that a member of the cabinet wanted it to be outfitted for $40 million, that contract being given to a particular contractor who was a relative of the minister. By today, I'm hearing that the outfitting has been stopped by the minister because we're now talking about $71 million. I want to ask them, are they renting the building or are they buying the building? That is not rent nor purchase, that is outfitting the building. Are you all aware of what is happening to the people of Trinidad and Tobago? So the pull and tug over the outfitting caused the building not to be outfitted, not to be used, caused you to pay for it without getting the use of it. And in the meantime, the price of outfitting is climbing to now it's at 71 million, and we are being told by the newspapers, not by the Parliament Committee, not by the Parliament, we're being told by the newspapers that some 20-odd million have already been spent for work that is unsatisfactory, and so on and so on and so on. That is only a small part of what is happening to you people of Trinidad and Tobago. And while this is going on, your parliament is an innocent or idle bystander waiting to read the newspapers. And when the opposition functions the way we function, the way I function, some of you misguided ones say, what happened to Rowley? You're always fighting. I will fight for you and I will put an end to that. All over this country, there are needs. There are needs to be serviced. Sometimes it costs $1 million, $500,000, $250,000, $10 million. Those needs are not being met. And I have to stomach these creeps taking from you like candy from a baby and telling me that we're going to outfit a building for 71 million when they handpick. Handpick. Have you seen the contractors who they invite? All kind of jagabats. They invite to put proposal in, but they know who they want to give the contract to. That much they know. And they have the temerity to stand on ceremony and say, if my friend or my father can't get it, it will not be done. That's like the man who has tell a woman, if I can't have you, nobody could have you. And that normally ends up in violence and death. That's what's happening to Trinidad and Tobago. And when I say I object to that, the very victims of that rape join them in their foolishness to criticize Rowley. It has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with you, your grandchildren, your neighbor, and your community. I'm all right. I'm all right. But when this is going on, who in this country is prepared to stand up and say that is wrong and it must come to an end? And sometimes you have to lead from in front. And on this matter, I lead from in front. You want to tell me you want to pay a member of parliament $17,000 a month, but the deputy chairman of a commission that meets once a month. Once a month. He gets $21,000 or more. He gets benefits. Medical members of parliament work themselves to death. Virtually every member of parliament has some medical issue from the stress of the job. We are not supposed to get medical. But the chairman of a commission, he gets medical. The housing allowance of some state officers is the housing allowance, is more than the pay for a member of parliament. How can that be right? How can that be fair? A member of parliament is full-time on the job. I always tell people I was kneeling down next to a coffin in a church, and the man next to me was harassing me for a house. Because we are always seen to be on the job. You call a member of parliament and he or she can tell you, I'm having breakfast or I'm on vacation. Once you make contact with your member of parliament, you got it done, he or she is on the job. We have no working hours. The amount of volume of documents we have to read to be able to speak for 5 minutes. Because when they hide their wrongdoing in boxes of documents, you have to read it all or they get away scot-free. And the commission wants to tell us that they don't know what members of parliament do. So that they cannot properly determine what they should earn. And I simply ask a question. All the other people who have been given proper emoluments and terms and conditions, did the commission do a job evaluation on them? And this commission been there for 20 years. Or 25, and shamelessly tells us they don't know what the job of a parliamentarian is, so they can't properly determine where the parliamentarian falls in the scheme of things in paying public officials. But that is, and I make the point again, it's not an argument about a pay increase for parliamentarians. It's an argument about the unavailability of parliamentarians to the parliament. What we would like is that members of parliament are available to the parliament and not be out there going looking for work elsewhere. Or worse, being out there getting jobs that conflict with their role as members of parliament. And if the people of this country can't discern the mischief in this and the danger it poses to your well-being, then maybe you are quite in order to accept what you get. But I am of the view that there are enough people in Trinidad and Tobago who can understand this simple logic that the parliament must be the watchdog, effective watchdog on the cabinet. And don't wait for any prime minister to do it. Because prime ministers like it the way it is. Because it allows the prime ministerial reach and authority, this total control that the prime minister has. Like to control everybody. They don't want anybody not under their control, because if you aren't under their control, you might object to what they want to do. And in many instances, they need to be controlled. Because something in that office affects people that once they get there, they start all kind of nonsense. And if the people in the parliament are not prepared to say to the Prime Minister, respectfully, I don't agree, then you, the people, will pay the price. And I'm not saying this because I am running for the office of political leader and the office of Prime Minister. I'm running because I believe this and I've lived this. I'm not in love with office. Office is important. I recognize all the time what contribution those persons made before me who ran this country in such a way that it gave me a chance to move from Mason Hall to Whitehall. And they functioned better then. How can we in 2014 accept the kind of nonsense I've just described to you, where we are pumping billions of dollars every year into the economy and turn a blind eye as to what happens to the money? And then we end up with a government 4 years and $300 billion spent, and you have nothing to show. Largely because you haven't been paying attention to what they have been doing. And every time you pay attention, it's something bad you're hearing about. I'm going to Parliament on Friday to put on the parliamentary record this government's, not attempt, this government's ongoing action of trying to build a water treatment plant. A treatment plant, not a water winning plant, you know. A water treatment plant. The water is already there. It's grey water from the sewer treatment. You treat it to bring it up to a standard to be used in Point Lisa's industry. You're building a water treatment plant for $1.6 billion. That might be the price, starting price. But I know for a fact from the documents available to me that another company who took part in the bidding process offered to build it for almost $500 million less. What is it about this other plant that you want the Rolls-Royce plant that costs the people of Trinidad and Tobago $500 million more? And you end up with only 2 contractors because you had 16 contractors who were interested in building it. You so operated that you chased away 14 of them. So they couldn't put in a bid. Or they turned their back on you and your bad, corrupt process. And you end up with 2. And somebody will get a largesse of $500 million. Good work if you can get it. And you, the innocent people of Trinidad and Tobago, being fed a lot of horse manure about what a wonderful job the government is doing, when in fact what they're doing is pulling out your teeth without cocaine. The people of Trinidad and Tobago are being abused and being told that all is well. If I have a fight, as I have one, it is with the people who have no conscience in treating with this country, in believing that what the country has as resources is theirs. And if you happen to have been fortunate to have been selected by a constituency and you get into parliament and you get into the cabinet, you must come out a millionaire. I come from a party that built this country. Bonnie Padmore came out of it. Years of service. He is not a millionaire. He's an ordinary citizen living an ordinary life on his pension. Hugh Francis came out of it. Curtis Joseph came out of it. Eric Williams came out of it. But these people came in, and in 3 years, every single one of them demand to be millionaires with your money. Yeah. There's one who has to go home every single day to make sure the money's still in the wall. But the bottom line is, the average person in this country does not seem to understand what is going on. And I'm giving you the assurance tonight. If you support me as political leader of the PNM, and you support the PNM, we'll win the next election. And we will treat with this matter. Because I will take the lead of ensuring that I throw in the dustbin any report from the Salaries Review Commission that tells me that a parliamentarian must earn $17,000 and not be available to the parliament, and the rest of the country can earn and nobody pays any attention. A parliamentarian would have to be a full-time officer to the parliament and available to the parliament, well paid and available. No, this moonlighting on unavailability. And that will go hand in hand with a commitment I made 2 years ago. 2 years ago. That the next cabinet in Trinidad and Tobago, which is going to be a PNM cabinet, with your support under my leadership, will have no more than 17 or 18 cabinet members. And it will have to be a cabinet where you get in there by experience and competence. Not all old, not all young, but you can't just walk off the street and become a cabinet minister again. That's done. That's finished. We've seen the effect of that. We've seen the effects of that. People just walking off the street. 6 weeks, they get picked up as a candidate for a party. They're lucky in the election, they get a post, and the next thing you know, they're a lord and master. Many of them are all over the place like Miss Howard Cat. All of a sudden, they want to live in palace. What is wrong with public service for public service sake? And to look back on your country and say, I built that, I contributed to that. What is wrong with that? What is wrong in looking at the thousands of young people at Canaan and other schools like this, knowing that you are in charge of their future and you didn't steal their money, you used the money to build another school here in Canaan? Young lady, if they don't build a school in this district, the PNM will build it. One of the reasons why there's a demand for additional school places here is because the PNM's housing program has been effective in providing additional housing units where land was available, and we delivered on our commitment to increase the housing stock, and you here were a beneficiary of that. So what has to be done now, as the population has grown, your districts have grown, I'm sure you're proud of your housing units, but you are to get the supporting units to go with it. If they don't do it before we get there, I give you the assurance, it will be done by the next PNM government as a matter of priority. We need to go back to becoming a society where we accept that public service is honorable. Public service is worthy of yours. I mean, I remember as a child, a young person in this country, when you heard about a permanent secretary, and I can call some of the names to you, Eugenio Moore, Frank Rampersad, and people like that. When you heard about a permanent secretary, you automatically know that you're treating with the highest caliber of citizen who was working for the country. Can we say that today? And one of the reasons why you're saying no is because as fast as you breed the ministries, you breed unprepared PSs and deputy PSs. And it only compounds the problem. Doesn't solve it. So you hold out that you are PNM. You hold out that you love this country. Don't listen to dotish arguments which say that you can leave the parliament as a football that you only can kick around. As a matter of fact, you know, you can take the chance of being firmer with members of parliament. Because if you don't like what they're doing, you don't like how they're functioning, they are the only public officers that you can fire. You can't fire the magistrate, you can't fire the judge, you can't take issue with the doctors, you can't even take issue with directors, not even the garbage collector. But I tell you what, if your members of parliament fall short in any way, you can and you do take action against them. That's what you do. And we need to fix this because we have the potential to do a whole lot better. We have the potential in Trinidad and Tobago to use our resources to make us a stronger and better people, to build our infrastructure. Every time a contractor gets a contract that is 2 or 3 times the real market price, or if the market price has on it a significant component of corrupt payment, then you are wasting your God-given resources. And when I make these arguments in the parliament, and the government does not respond, and then I see the COP having a meeting last Sunday talking about the need for proportional representation because the current system is not fair. What is not fair is the COP providing support to the UNC to empty out your treasury with no accountability. That's not fair to you. And that is why in this internal election in the PNM, I've drawn to your attention my firm stand that this offering of proportional representation as something new and something good to bring about the survival of the remnant of the COP and to allow the UNC what they think is a better chance will get no support from the PNM, and no person holding him or herself out as leader of the PNM who is in support of that is worthy of your support. None. Because they don't understand what is happening to us. They don't understand what the government is doing to us, and they don't understand the fixture and the long-term arrangements of any such development in Trinidad and Tobago. Chronic instability, cementing in place wrongdoing, and you call that what? Improvement? Difference? I say to you tonight here in Canaan Presbyterian School, fellow party members, and those of you listening at home, I have a record in this PNM and in this country I'm running on my record. I'm asking you to support me on my record. I'm asking you to support me on the basis that I've demonstrated to you a commitment to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. All the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And I am not afraid to risk the comforts, wherever they may lie, as long as I do that with a clear conscience that I've done what was right for those who depended on me. And right now, the people of Diego Martin West, they depend on me because they have elected me 7 times to represent them. And I see that you, the PNM, you're depending on me because you've sent me out there in all the battles and I've never turned tail in the face of the enemy. And right now, if Trinidad and Tobago ever needed a caballero, it's now. I ask you to support me for the post of political leader and to support the team that has taken us from where we were to where we are since 2010 so that we can face the challenges of the next general election, whenever they call it, with the confidence that the people in charge of your party have a good record, they know what it's about, and they have a good chance of delivering victory to you, the PNM, and the Trinidad, people of Trinidad and Tobago. So tonight, I want to thank you all for coming out here in the large numbers to this school and this location. We haven't won Oropouche East yet, but we're getting there. And 2014, 2015 might be the time when Oropouche East, the label of Oropouche East in the Parliament, may very well go to the People's National Movement. I want to thank all those who've been running this campaign with me. And those of you who recognize that May 18th is election day, PNM election day. May 18th is the dry run for the general election. Come out and take part in the election. Get your name, make sure your name is on the list of party members as you are. And bring out all your known party members and say to them, we party members have been given a responsibility for our party. Let us be worthy of that responsibility by coming out and vote for the officers of your choice. And when you do that, you will say to the rest of the country, our leader is our choice for Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. Come join us in the PNM because great is the PNM, great is the PNM, great is the PNM, and we shall prevail.